everyone. In today's video, we are going to start my 31 Days of Halloween series for 2020, and I've never done a 31 Days of Halloween, so this is a new experience for me, and I am collaborating with Helen from Black Swan Beauty for all of these, so you'll get to see a little picture or video of her design and all of mine, and I'll put links to her videos in the description box below, so definitely go check out hers as well. This first one that we're doing is going to be a voodoo doll design, which voodoo dolls are something that just really freak me out. I have a list. I think I actually list it later on in this video what my list is, but I really don't like voodoo dolls, and this design has been on my kind of like to-do list for Halloween for the past several years, and I've always chickened out and not done it. So I wanted to get this one out of the way right off the bat. I hope you guys like it, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future Halloween designs as well.
Begin with an overlay of a shimmery brown acrylic. I really like to use shimmery colors on or glittery colors on nails that aren't just automatically very feminine. I am a super girly girl, so if it isn't a very feminine design, I always like to add a little bits of glitz and glamour just to bring that element to it. Obviously, if that's not your style, you can go glitter free. That works perfectly well. But then we're going to encapsulate this nail with a layer of clear acrylic. Anytime you do use a glitter or a shimmer, you do want to encapsulate just to make sure that it isn't going to ruin the glitter. There are some that don't need it, so just know your product, but I always like to err on the safe side and use that clear encapsulation. So now I'm going to use a medium tan color, and I'm going to start sculpting out my voodoo doll. So this color is actually called warm gold, and it is a really old Young Nails color that isn't in production anymore, but it is the perfect color for this little voodoo doll because it kind of has an almost burlap type of a color scheme to it. So that works very, very well. And I'm going to take the tip of my brush and push in for his eyes, and also very gently carve in a little bit of a frown. And then I'm also going to sculpt his little teeny tiny body. So I wanted him to have a very comical look to him. I am terrified of voodoo dolls, and so I didn't want him to look too scary and too serious because that would just be too much for me. So I wanted to keep him on kind of the, I don't know, the cheerful, cartoonish, funny side of a voodoo doll, if there is such a thing. So after I have his body, I took and I sculpted in one arm, but now I'm going to go back to his face, and I have a brown color that isn't the same as the background. It's more of a cherry brown, like a redder brown, and I'm going to fill in his eyes a little bit, his eye sockets, just to kind of add a shadow in them. And then I'm going to take that same color, so it's a darker brown than the background, and I'm going to add just one little piece of hair sticking up off the top of his head. And now with yellow, I'm going to be sculpting one of his eyes. So I'm going to say that my voodoo doll is made up of all sorts of different scrap pieces. So the one eye is yellow, and I took a piece of wire and I poked a hole in it once that acrylic was starting to set up. And then for the other eye, I'm going to sculpt a blue button. So to start out the button, I'm just going to sculpt a circle of blue. Pretty easy. Kind of tuck it in if it starts to flow out where it isn't supposed to be. And then I'm going to go back to adding arms and legs to my voodoo doll. And then I'm going to go back to my button and use the dotting tool just to very gently create an indent in the center so it has that button appearance with the ringer on the outside and the divot in the middle. Then go back to my legs. So I like to skip around and go from part to part when I'm sculpting things, as you can obviously tell. The reason I do this is because I like to let things set for a moment before I sculpt next to them or on top of them. So like for instance with the eyes, how I sculpted part of his head and then I moved on to a different area and then I went back. That's so that the head acrylic has a chance to solidify and really, really cure before I begin messing it up, basically. And so I also sculpted a little heart on his chest, and then I'm gonna go back and add 2 more strands of hair, so that's for 3 total. And that little heart that I sculpted was with a really nice kind of pinky red. And now in a nail form backing, I'm going to be sculpting the last arm that I have, and I didn't sculpt that yet, as you may have noticed. So I've got the 1 arm, 2 legs. So this is the 3rd one, or the 4th one, 4th appendage, 2nd arm, however you want to think about that. And I'm going in circles here. So I'm sculpting that on a nail form backing because it's going to go up, off, and exaggerated off the nail. So I've got a little piece of wire. So this is going to be for the pin that my voodoo doll is pressing into his own eye. So I've got that little piece of wire, and then I'm going to fold his hand over just like so. So it's like he's grabbing it. I'm going to put a little bit of nail glue in both that hole in the eye and on the nail where the arm should be. Place that little piece that I made onto the nail with the glue so it all sticks itself together. Then with more of my warm gold acrylic, I'm going to be filling out that arm a little bit so it isn't quite so thin, and really making sure that it is securely attached to the nail. And then with a bit more red acrylic, I'm going to add the little end of the pin on the end of the wire. So now switching over to acrylic paint, I'm going to begin adding all of the finer details of this design. So at this point, you can really go wild with it and do some super crazy detailing, and you could add stitching all over this voodoo doll, which I think would look phenomenal if you are going to go that route. But if you want to keep it simple and cute and less scary, kind of like me, I don't blame you either. Like I said before, these things really terrify me. They're on my list. I've got a list of things that I just don't mess around with. Voodoo dolls on the list. So I've got little black outlines that I'm going to be doing around him. And if you did want to do the stitching route, this is where you would, instead of doing these outlines that I'm doing, you would do them with thinner outlines and then little cross lines across them to give that stitching effect. And I did do a little bit of it, but you could definitely do more. So I did a couple of those little stitching lines on the heart. And you can kind of take it as far as you want, or, you know, as little as you want. It's really up to you. So same thing on the mouth. I'm going to do a little bit of the stitching there. I think on the mouth it is kind of a really key point to do the stitch marks, just to make it really look like a voodoo doll. That's kind of one of the key factors, I think, at least in my mind. And do a little bit of outlining around his eyes and on his hair. And you can do all sorts of different wounds for your voodoo doll. You wouldn't have to be stabbing himself in the eye. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy stuff. Really let your mind go wild. I am going to add a little bit of a gory element to him and take some red paint and have it dripping from his eyes. And then I'm going to apply a layer of gel sealer over the background and cure it. And then apply some matte top coat over my voodoo doll. And that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this design as much as I do, even though I really don't handle voodoo dolls very well. The list is voodoo dolls, mummies, spiders, and sharks, pretty much. So if you guys are ever curious, that is my list. And don't forget to share your creations with me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll see you next time. Bye!